Super.
Okay, Jimmy. Stay out of trouble.
Oh, I will. Definitely will. Okay, I'll see you. Here we are, last English class. Everyone say something.
All my friends are
All right. 42 minutes.
Quiet, please. Think of this one, guys. Get Jim, get the camera. You're not Jim Decker. You're Blanche, baby.
Trying to learn here, okay? Take out your orders, please. Can I have a personal
Get Jim.
Yeah, I'm
I'd
alright.
just like to say that it has been a
Why don't you go through that window again? Mr. Bergh, you can't handle us.
The major players were that there are no IDs, there are no passages for commentary. I expect it to be an exam you can do a solid job on in an hour. Nice. I mean in 2 hours. What did I say? A solid job on in 2 hours. That convenes at 8:30 in Mrs. Hart's room on Monday morning.
I'm going to be hungover.
First, the colleagues and I all said farewell this afternoon. Bitter because we're sad to see you go. We've forged some pretty significant associations here over the years. And sweet because, thank God, we'll be able to keep the 300 forms in check without you guys around any longer. And you'll see just how bittersweet the experience of graduation is on the afternoon of June the 11th. It's as always as sad as it is a happy time, because a commencement is a commencement. It's not an ending, it's a beginning. And with that in mind, some of you may have heard this before, but it's never, it seems to me, a bad thing to hear it again. I first encountered it in 1963. Written by a mentor who first taught me seriously the study of American literature, but addresses a subject that increasingly you all are going to have to focus on in the years to come. And I think most of the allusions here that I can't explain you'll understand from your own reading. Called The End of All Ambition. Nathaniel Hawthorne writes of a young man who liked to wander in the fields enjoying the flowers and the butterflies. His industrious neighbors objected. He wastes the sunshine, they said, by walking. Presumably he should have used it for making hay. This Puritan doctrine of work has suffered, I am told, some change, some atrophy, but it persists nevertheless, and the American is likely to feel at least uneasy if he is not busily improving the shining hour. There are those who say that keeping busy is America's chief business, who say that we are so busy doing things that we seldom take time to wonder whether they are worth doing. Those persons say that we are all so busy getting on that we rarely examine the spot we stand on at the moment. What are we all so busy about? What do we want? We are trying, of course, to be successful. We all want to play in the majors. This, too, has been called a particularly American habit. They say that we worship the goddess success, and William James gave the goddess a name not suitable to be spoken in ecclesiastical surroundings. William James was the founder of the Department of Psychology at Harvard, brother of the distinguished Henry James, one of the great American authors of the turn of the century. And he, in a book called Varieties of Religious Experience, which I hope most of you will encounter in college, named the goddess success the bitch goddess. They also say that we worship money, or at least they said so until a short time ago. Now it is said that we worship the appearance of being rich and successful. You will have noticed that the people who advertise Cadillacs ask us to buy them not because they will carry us to the Acme or to Philadelphia, but because they will announce to all the world that the driver is a success. Modest persons who might sincerely like to have a Cadillac and who could afford one hesitate to buy lest they be accused of assuming a status symbol inappropriate to their place in the hierarchy. A vast industry instructs us in dissatisfaction. It wants us to be unhappy with our 19 the 1996 Chevrolet with black and white television screens, with peanut butter glasses that don't have ducks on them. That industry rides on a strong current of American tradition. As early as the 1830s, Tocqueville was saying that Americans are, quote, forever brooding over advantages they do not possess, unquote. The American, he said, quote, clutches everything, he holds nothing fast, but soon loosens his grip to pursue fresh gratifications, unquote. No wonder why fadism is our largest industry. He, quote, builds a house to spend his latter years in it, and he sells it before the roof is on. He embraces a profession and gives it up. He settles in a place which he soon afterward leaves to carry his changeable longings elsewhere. Death at length overtakes him, but it is before he is weary of his bootless chase of that complete felicity which is forever on the wing, unquote. Tocqueville was anticipating and partially answering the question, what makes Sammy run? Sammy Run is a novel by Bud Schulberg about the fictional Hollywood producer Sammy Glick, who was always out to make the fast buck. Sammy, like the White Queen, runs because he must if he is to stay in the same place. He runs even harder than she because he knows the American dogma that one who is not obviously moving ahead must be slipping behind. He knows the terrible onus that accompanies failure and the plaudits due to success. Sammy is a paradigm as well as a parody of the successful man. Sammy wastes no sunshine or midnight oil either. He gets the goddess, and she turns out to be precisely what William James said she was. His career suggests that there may be something wrong with, something missing from the ordinary conception of success. At the extreme from Sammy Glick is Holden Caulfield, whom I hope you have met. If you have read The Catcher in the Rye, you will remember how one night when he had been kicked out of Pensy Prep, he crept into Phoebe's room to talk with her. Phoebe was only 10, but she was bright, and Holden thought she was the best sister anybody ever had. Holden was right. They talked about Holden's trouble. And old Phoebe finally said, you don't like anything that's happening. You can't even think of one thing. Anyway, I like it now, Holden said. I mean right now, sitting here with you and just chewing the fat. That isn't anything really. It is so something really. Certainly it is. Why isn't it? People never think anything is anything really. I'm getting sick of it. Once more, in deference to my surroundings, I have cleaned up the words a little, but I have not tried to improve upon Holden's wisdom.
Go ahead, slide.
People never think anything is anything really. No, not unless it has a fine name, a high polish, and comes in a choice of colors. Not unless it slams into the consciousness like a hammer, has significance, and possibly even use. Yet even a moment's reflection persuades us what an exclusive, even hopeless idea of life that is. It leaves out all the things that give our lives their tone and quality. What is it that most frequently makes us unhappy? Not blows or betrayals, not the failure to get a jag for Christmas, but an unsmiling face turned upon a cheerful greeting, refusals to share our moment's gladness. We are made miserable by people's apparent unwillingness to let us love them. We feel these as big things, the things that give us an empty feeling in the stomach, yet they are precisely the things of which it is said that they aren't anything really. It is the same with joy. It more often comes in drops than in tidal waves, and he who ignores the drops because they are small is likely to carry an empty bucket. There are bright young novelists, and some neither bright nor young, who would make us scorn the life of diapers and pea soup and one woman. who sneer at the humdrum virtues and invite us to despair of our commonplace lives, bounded as they are by the office at home and family parties in the backyard. But life is not a perpetual frenzy of adventure, and those who must wait for happiness until they can go to Waikiki may go without it at the last. It must be picked up from the roadside. The greater part of it will be compounded of those things of which it is said that they aren't anything really. Success in the conventional sense of the word, becoming an excellent surgeon, a learned judge, a wealthy man, is not in itself happiness. But for many men, the opposite is misery. In the surgery or on the bench or at the stock exchange, these men exercise their public functions, and no doubt they feel pains or pleasures according as they exercise them well or not. But when the public hour is over, they go home to wives, children, and friends. In their dealings with their children, their fame or wealth or learning count for nothing. What counts is their commonplace humanity, their honesty, their power to share the child's play and problems, their being able to love. The fame of a husband has never yet been enough to make a wife happy. Not all a man's honors can console him for a gray coldness on the face of a friend. If these things are true, as they think they are for the eminent and the well-to-do, how shall it be with us who are of the middle lot, who cannot read about ourselves in the paper, and there find a small consolation for our human inadequacy, who cannot build a great new house and swimming pool to attract the people who seem not to like us for ourselves? If you have encountered Jay Gatsby, you know what I mean. If you have read Sinclair Lewis's Dodsworth, you know what I mean. Most of you will, in any event, have heard of Richard Cory, the rich man who, quote, went home and put a bullet through his head.
I read that poem.
Thank
Yeah.
That paper.
We can all play in the majors. If we like, we can eat out our hearts in the bitterness of disappointment, wishing ourselves like one more rich in hope, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, but beweeping one's outcast state has never yet changed the state. So long as we define success only in terms of large public achievement, and turn our daily bread to ashes because we haven't achieved in that way, we shall be miserable. We'll apologize for practicing law in the hometown instead of being Chief Justice. We'll think we count for nothing because we teach in a small school instead of at Yale or Oxford. We'll say to ourselves, I don't amount to anything really. We will despise the present moment and refuse the quiet joys it offers, because our happiness will be in the future when the world calls us a success, or when we can make the world think we are a success. That means adopting the vulgar notion of success, a notion that excludes far more of life than it takes in. Or we can try to remember what children don't have to be told, that defending the Alamo in the backyard is fun, no matter who wins. We can remember that so far as a man ever finds happiness, he finds it in the day that is passing over him. Maturity knows that happiness is far from commonplace, that in life there is more to be endured perhaps than to be enjoyed. But the sunshine must be used for walking in it. Find your happiness in a job well done, in a wise contentment with the hour, in love freely given. If you can continue to respect yourself, you'll be more of a success than others. And a man can respect himself in yesterday's Chevrolet as much as in tomorrow's Cadillac. The throng of your colleagues who were too busy to attend this occasion will of course be burning to know what was said. You may, if you wish, say that I counseled ignoble ease and peaceful sloth, that I urged complacency and an end of striving. But if you do, I shall think you wrong, or that in trying to express one aspect of the truth, I have expressed myself clumsily. I prefer that you should say, he elaborated upon a wise sentence of Samuel Johnson, that the end of all ambition is to be happy at home. I find that very wise advice, and I hope you take to heart some of Denham Sutcliffe's points. As you enlarge the universe in which you operate, and the horizons are always broadening for you, make sure that you have a definition of success that works for you. Did we all make it this afternoon?
Yeah, except for Craig Hopkins, skip him.
One thing,
Yeah.
I hope you have a chance, if you don't get around to reading William James, hopefully you'll have some course in which you'll encounter Alexis de Tocqueville and read Democracy in America. And stand in awe of what kind of a prescient genius he was. The observations he made about us as a culture that have held up almost to the millennium. And he did it in the early part of the 19th century. No matter how many people we've added to the melting pot here, assimilation must have worked in some measure, because the fundamental character of the nation doesn't seem to have changed that much. We are still as fickle as we are told by Mr. de Tocqueville we were. After all, we are on to the third trial of the century in just the last 5 years. And if you consider we started with the first trial of the century in the 1920s, our enthusiasm for trials of the century indicates just how fickle we are. And if Whitewater ever comes down to indictments, they'll be the trial of the millennium, I guess. But de Tocqueville's Democracy in America is a fascinating study. And among other wonderful things you'll encounter, there are still some things. One of the saddest parts of this time of the senior year is the inevitable concession we have to make, that we are part of a larger process that makes it inevitable for you to fall into the trap of thinking that Haverford School is a means to the end, and the end has been achieved when a letter arrives in the mail from some institution of supposedly higher learning that welcomes you. Haverford School is an end in itself, and it's an end in itself far more valuable, probably, than the education on which you're about to embark, which has become shakier and flakier every year for the last 2 decades. And I say it's an end in itself because this is the last stage. What we do as a school committed to the perpetuation of the liberal arts tradition is impart to you the life breath of a culture, that there is going to be a culture of the future. And you will increasingly find at the college level how flimsy your studies can be. And indeed, it will be possible to go through 4 years of college without ever reading a poem again. I'm glad Mr. Hollowell read some of you. That's an appalling idea to me, but it's a commonplace now. So what we do at the Haverford School, and why we are as dedicated to what we do as we are, is we see an abrogation of responsibility by those at the next level and even beyond. And for us, if the perpetuation of a culture is not accomplished, we will become so disconnected from the past that our future will be mortgaged to the hilt, as it may already be. So, while you're on your internships or your seminar studies, or your painting endeavors, reflect back on that this really hasn't been a means to an end. Getting that piece of mail back from your college sweepstakes box top filling out process isn't the end of what it's all about. What it was all about was becoming a more reflective, informed man who I always urge my colleagues in the English department, some of whom are over-endowed with learning as well as degrees, that they should never assume that they are teaching the last word on any given book or subject to anybody at the Haverford School. If we do our job right, they're going to encounter all these things again at different levels of maturity and with different points of view to bring to bear to the study. So I hope we've done our job well. I hope you're going to do your job well in the future. So, the year comes to an end practically. Who's got the most exciting internship?
Oh, yeah.
I don't.
I do. Programming
Hold up.
computers in Glenn's room.
Programming computers, that's not even an internship.
Come on, Blue! Keep it up! Keep it on, Blue! Come on!